All right, welcome to The Explainer. We are diving into a wild one today. A story from the world of UFOs that all comes down to the explosive claims of one former intelligence officer. So here's the big question, right? What if? What if an alien actually survived the 1947 New Mexico UFO crash? I mean, we've all heard the stories, but a former Air Force counterintelligence guy, Richard Doty, says he saw the actual classified proof that it's true. So let's get into it. The story really kicks off in the summer of 47. Now, according to these classified briefings that Doty talks about, we're not just looking at one crash, the famous Roswell incident. Nope, we're talking about two separate events. And let's be clear, this whole story, the entire narrative, it all comes down to this one guy, Richard Doty. He was a former special agent for the Air Force's OSI, and he claims he got a peek behind a curtain that was way, way beyond top secret. He's painting a picture of a history that's been deliberately hidden from all of us. The timeline this briefing lays out is, wow, it's super specific. It all starts with those two crashes in June of 47. Then recovery teams find not just bodies, but one living being. And the survivor, they called it an Eben, eventually dies 5 years later in 1952 at Los Alamos. Okay, now we're getting to the really wild part of all this. This is the big one. Doty doesn't just claim he read documents. He says he was shown actual 16mm film footage of the entire recovery operation. And what he says was on this film, that's what makes this so hard to just dismiss. He said it showed everything. The two different crash sites, Corona and Horse Mesa, soldiers picking up wreckage and alien bodies, and of course, the surviving Eben that was studied for years. But it gets crazier. He talks about a rectangular plexiglass energy device, like a power source, and even footage of UFOs watching our nuclear facilities. Think about that, right after World War II. All right, so here's where it gets really interesting. You might think this is just one guy's crazy story, right? But Doty's account, it doesn't just float out there by itself. It actually clicks into place like a puzzle piece with other famous UFO whistleblower claims. Take the name for the alien species, the Ebens. That's not just a Doty thing. That same term pops up in the super controversial Project Serpo documents. The ones that claim there was an exchange program with aliens from Zeta Reticuli. So you've got the same weirdly specific terms showing up in two supposedly separate leaks. And check this out. It happens again with the technology. Doty talks about this rectangular, super powerful zero-point energy source. Well, does that sound familiar? It should. It's a lot like what Bob Lazar, the guy who put Area 51 on the map, talked about. He described a small reactor that used element 115 to create gravity waves. So you've got different names, yeah? But it's the same core idea, a small, almost magical power source. And it doesn't stop there. Think about how they fly these things. Doty mentioned a kind of headset, a neural interface, that let the pilot fly the ship with their mind. Fast forward decades, and what does whistleblower David Grush say? He claims the U.S. has retrieved craft with, you guessed it, neural-linked flight interfaces. It's the same concept repeating over and over again. Okay, so let's pull back and look at the big picture here. When you see all these connections, you start to realize they form a really clear, repeating pattern that runs through decades of UFO stories. When you actually lay it all out like this, you can see it. The same alien races, the Ebens or the Zetas, the same kind of technology, zero-point energy or element 115, the same facilities like Wright-Patterson and Los Alamos, and the same phenomena like telepathic control. It just keeps popping up. This isn't one guy's story anymore. It's a whole web of stories that seem to be connected. And let's focus on that number 5 for a second. That's huge. What that means is there are at least 5 major, supposedly independent stories about crash retrievals that all point a finger at the exact same place, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. That's not just a coincidence, right? That makes it a cornerstone of this whole thing. So you see these common threads everywhere, don't you? The nuclear connection, why are they always showing up at our atomic sites? The mention of 2 crash sites, not just one, and the shared details about the Eben species and their crazy energy source. It all points to the idea that Doty's story isn't some weird one-off. It's actually a key piece in a much bigger, interconnected puzzle. Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. What are we actually looking at here? What does this massive web of connected stories really mean? Is it the truth, or is it something else entirely? The source material we're looking at puts it perfectly. The real power of Doty's story isn't just about whether you believe him. It's about how his story fits so perfectly inside this bigger narrative, this recurring story about intelligence and recovery that's been built up for decades. So what's the takeaway? I mean, what do we do with this? On one hand, you could say this is just a 70-year-long echo chamber, where one story just feeds the next, creating this giant modern myth. But on the other hand, could it be the slow, steady leak of a cosmic secret? The result of different people over many decades, all catching a glimpse of the exact same unbelievable truth? That's really the question that the Doty files leave us with.